Let's be honest, we will never agree on everything, whether we've never met or we've known each other forever. My story, it's different from your story. Disagreements at any level, they are inevitable. In fact, I'd argue that disagreeing is actually a healthy part of being human. But why should we love people when we disagree with them? In today's world, we might honestly wonder, is that even possible? And if it is, as followers of Jesus, why should or would we even want to? We church people talk a mean game about loving like Jesus loved or loving our enemies, but we all know it is not that easy. I wear this shirt to remind myself of this more than anyone else. Trust me. The easy route is to blow people off, to unfollow, to unfriend them, to walk away, to cancel them. And we've all seen families torn apart when disagreements turn into taking sides, which turn into people refusing to talk to each other. Maybe that's your story. And I acknowledge setting boundaries is important to love too. We'll talk about that later. But those times when we consider walking away simply out of convenience or out of apathy, I want us to consider another way. In the book of John, chapter 13, Jesus says a series of things that are meant to prepare people for his death. At the beginning of that chapter, he gathers his disciples and he does something strange. He washes their feet. Now, the reason this was actually strange was because Jesus was their teacher. He was their leader, and a leader would have never done something like that. Through the very act to his disciples, Jesus was signaling that his way was different from the world's way. It wasn't a power structure anyone would have been used to. Now, Jesus and his followers had gone through a lot together by this point. They had traveled together. They had struggled together. They had experienced miracles together. They had even been challenged by the authorities together. And so in verse 33, when Jesus says this, "Where I am going, you cannot come," that would have struck them pretty hard. They followed him this far, so why should that end? And then in verse 34, Jesus says this. He says, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Now, this is a much more than simply a generic, hey, think of me when I'm gone and think of love. No, in this, Jesus is saying that in order for them to truly be disciples, even after he's gone, they need to remember what it was like to be loved by Jesus. And then by loving their people in that way, it'll actually show the world what Jesus' love can do for them. Now, did the disciples disagree with one another and even sometimes with Jesus? They did. Did they experience pain while following Jesus? For sure. Did loving Jesus lead to some uncomfortable situations? Yes. And we'll disagree too. But what would change if our why was the same as the why that Jesus made sure his disciples understood? That it's only through love, even when it's hard and messy and uncomfortable, that people will in turn see God's love for them.